Oh, welcome. Thank you guys for joining me with Howling with the Wolfe season 3 kicking off. We back, baby. For everyone who has joined me through this journey from season 1 in Tennessee to last year out here in Miami to another year out here in Miami. Thank you. It's always fun to do these things, whether it's talking about a good team or a bad team or just the NFL in general. So happy that I have another job for another year, but I'm happy that I can have these sort of informal talks with you guys and just chat about my thoughts behind the NFL, my thoughts behind the teams I cover, in this case, the Miami Dolphins on a daily basis, and just kind of learn a little bit more about what you guys want, and also kind of let my hair down a little bit. Got a little bit of hair. Got a fresh fade today. Let my hair down a little bit on who I am and what my personality is, and let you guys enjoy in that. So hopefully you guys are going to be active, and we'll get these things started. For those who haven't been on this show before, the way this works is I'll have a few topics that I want to discuss. I definitely want to talk about Antonio Brown today. I definitely want to talk about Tank or the Dolphins Tankgate, whatever you want to call it. Tank for Tua. Is that going on? And kind of want to give my thoughts about that in the trade. I want to give my thoughts about the NFL offseason and sort of what things have gone on throughout. And as always, you guys have an opportunity to sort of ask whatever you want on that right side of the panel. It's open for you at any time to ask what you want. If you want to know about me as a person, if you want to know about the Dolphins or the NFL or whatever, fire away. Just about everything is on limits. So I'm definitely eager to see what you guys come up with, and let's make this as conversational and as fun as we can. The NFL season's about to start in 30 minutes. So I think I'm uber pumped for that, and let's go ahead and jump into it. For those of you who haven't seen today, the story of the day, and I was just talking in the locker room with a bunch of Dolphins players about this, because just like us fans, players chew up news stories and chew up information, and it's just as fun for them as it is for us. That Antonio Brown deal dropped today, and the reports came out that Antonio Brown essentially had a screaming match with Mike Mayock, the Raiders GM, and threatened to attack him, and essentially said that, hey, fine me for punting the ball away. That was the Ian Rappaport report from NFL Network, and it was shocking. I talked to a Dolphins receiver, Isaiah Ford, in the locker room, and he was like, man, I've never seen anything like that in the locker room. He's like, I don't know if I've seen anybody that bold to do something like that. I think my thought about it initially is, look, the Raiders knew what they were signing up with when they got Antonio Brown. This is not a different dude than he was before, but clearly they thought they were going to be able to curb some things. They thought they were going to be able to change him, and there's the old saying, when you get in a relationship, a woman always trying to change the man to whatever she want to be. Sometimes, like Maya Angelou said, when somebody tells you who they are the first time, believe them. The Raiders didn't believe Antonio Brown when he told them, or better yet, they probably thought his talent was more important than sort of the off the field stuff. So they laid their bed, and now they gotta they made their bed. Now they gotta lay in it. So I don't really feel bad for the Raiders. I feel like they took their risk, and right now it's not working. So is this situation salvageable? I just was watching NFL Network. Shouting out one of my competitors, but they have done a good job covering this today. They sort of talked to Drew Rosenhaus, Antonio Brown's agent, and Drew is a super agent. He's probably one of the best people to handle this sort of situation. Maybe he can talk to Antonio. Maybe there's some sort of apology going on. There's probably going to have to be some sort of feelings curb to make this thing work. But it sounds like he's not going to play week 1. He's got $30 million in guarantees. It sounds like they're going to try to come for his money if they try to suspend him. So it could get sticky, or Antonio Brown, could bite the bullet and say, hey, I was wrong. I apologize. I'm going to try my best to stay in line and not step out, and maybe this thing could wash over. But if history showed us anything with Antonio Brown, he is not predictable. So I don't know if there's any way we could feel comfortable with him, doing anything of sorts. So I know I drafted him on one of my fantasy teams, and I'm sweating bullets because if Antonio Brown not playing all year, then I'm not going to win my fantasy league. And then Antonio Brown gotta have to answer some questions. Why I didn't win my fantasy league. I'm just playing. So yeah, that's really my thoughts on Antonio Brown. I'm looking at what you're saying, Steve. He's tripping. Yeah, I think that's sort of the vibe. Like I don't know the background. I'm not out there in Oakland, so I don't know if Mike said something wild to him to make him flip out, or if he just, it's just been a crazy offseason with Antonio Brown. From the helmet gate, like I was joking with one of the dudes in the locker room, like how important really can a helmet could be. And one of the players told me he's worn 5 different helmets in his career. That's a whole different story. The helmet gate, from the feet, from getting frostbite in France. This dude finds his way in the storylines. If you think the Dolphins were chaotic this offseason, Antonio Brown had just enough storylines for himself to carry this thing. So it's a lot going out there in Oakland, and I'm sure a day like today would be somewhere where John Gruden wished he was still in the Monday Night Football booth, and Mike Mayock probably wishes he still was in the NFL Network studios. So, that's sort of my thoughts on there. If you guys want to talk about that more, we can discuss it. But I kind of want to move along. I'm going to answer a couple of you guys' questions, and then I'm going to jump into sort of my thoughts on Dolphins Tankgate. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts and perspectives and different nuggets that I want to kind of give to you guys. But I know a few of you guys have been waiting for questions, so let me go ahead and get to those. Like I always say, if you have any questions, just fire them along, and I'll try my best to see them. If I don't see them, just shoot them off again, and I should see them the second time around. So, Mark James is asking, can you see Flores losing the locker room like some people reported? Some people, I guess I might be some people, part of that some people. I wrote a column, today, essentially about the Dolphin situation, and it's part perspective, part reporting. And my thought was that, the Dolphins are clearly all in with this plan. But I think there is a risk, a significant risk of the Dolphins losing trust of players in that locker room because the now it seems to be pushed into the background. And it's so uncertain for players. So I think it's a dangerous path because, if you're a rebuilding team, if you're a tanking team, whatever the Dolphins want to define who they are, you can't simulate this. This isn't Madden, like I played Madden growing up. I know some of you guys may have played Madden, and you try to make all these trades, do all these free agent signings, build a team up from nothing. And you could just simulate the regular season. You don't have to worry about the losses or the pain or anything like that. It don't work like that in the real world. You feel everything. So if the Dolphins come out this week and get smacked, 30-7 or something like that, players are going to be disappointed. Coaches are going to be disappointed. It's going to be a sad day. So you can't just skip that and say, hey, 2020 it'll all be good, or 2021 it'll all be good. So, I know Brian Flores has been running a really hard camp. Guys have told me that he hasn't relented on them even after camp ended. They respect him as a coach. They respect him as a man. But it's tough to have a team that is being gutted a week before the regular season and still have players, having to work the way they are and expecting them to come out here and stay together and compete every week and put their bodies on the line every week to the 100%. If it doesn't seem like your front office is doing that same for you 100% this season. So it's just sort of a disconjointed plan as far as the now. So I do think there's a risk. But I do think, look, one of the Dolphins' main reasons for hiring Brian Flores is they felt like he would be able to be stable in this sort of period, be able to handle the pain, be able to get a pulse of the locker room and handle it. So this is the biggest challenge for him. And I don't know if he even expected this much pain this early. So I think, we look at this team, and I've never covered a team that's been as talent deficient going into a regular season as this. I sort of polled some of the Dolphins media people, and they sort of mentioned 2007 with Cam Cameron, was another team that, was comparable to this, but they felt like even that team had more talent than this team. So, it's different rebuilding versus purposely gutting a team for long-term benefits. So I do wonder, how safe Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be behind that offensive line. They have a completely different offensive line combination this week than they had last week, and that's worrisome for me. And I do think that, if the Dolphins are 0-6, I'm eager to see how they respond to Brian Flores telling them to run to the wall if they're not running plays. So, that's all elements that I have serious questions about. And I think that's part of why I wrote this column this morning, because you have to see the whole element. Yes, Dolphins fans can be all in on the tanking plan or all in on the rebuilding plan and say, hey, I'll be able to deal with the pain to 2021. But what if your core players aren't really ready for all that losing? Like, some people aren't cool with losing for 2 years and just trusting the process, as Joel Embiid made popular. So I think there are a fair share of people in the locker room that feel like, man, I don't want to waste the prime of my career, or I don't want to waste these years being with a terrible team. But they're not in a position to really say that. So I think that it's going to be up to the Dolphins, up to Brian Flores to continue to make sure the team shows progress, to be able to do everything coaching-wise to get them in a position to succeed. And you just hope that, there's enough leadership in this locker room, and hope there's enough leadership in his coaching staff where guys stay together. And more importantly than it all, I hope that Brian Flores and Chris Greer can see their plan through and see it to fruition. We talk about rebuilds in some of these jobs, whether it be Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns, or the Philadelphia 76ers. Some of the people who were the architects of those rebuilds didn't make it through. Hugh Jackson didn't make it. They had a front office change completely in Cleveland. Brett Brown made it in Philadelphia, but Sam Hinkie didn't make it. And you still see Philadelphia 76ers having signs saying Hinkie died for this as far as the process. So you got to understand there are people who get sort of chewed up by the process. And that's really what I'm focusing on when I sort of mention that, hey, there is, a chance here. So I hope that answers your question, Mark. Luis Velasquez, great to see you again, Luis. Kenny Stills being traded, how much of that had to do with the owner and the whole Jay-Z thing? Very interesting question. Here's what I'll say. And I've been asked this a few times because I've talked about this on Outside the Lines, and I had a good relationship with Kenny. I've written about Kenny and his work in the social justice realms a lot. I think the Dolphins have plausible deniability in this situation. And I can't say for certain whether this was intentional, but putting Kenny Stills in the Laramie Tunsil trade along with Laramie Tunsil for all those bounty of picks gives them plausible deniability that they were making it for a football move, and that it had nothing to do with Kenny's activism and what he said about the owner or what he said about the Jay-Z thing. I think it would be naive, this is my personal perspective, I think it would be naive to believe that, they had nothing to do with why Kenny is not a Dolphin. I do think that, there probably was some frustration, just sort of my educated opinion. There probably was some frustration inside the Dolphins that, this kept coming up as quote unquote a distraction, whether it be, the thing with the owner or the thing with Jay-Z. And, Kenny being sort of a middle-aged veteran, he sort of fit into the players that they're getting rid of vibe. So I think it sort of was a combination of, okay, this guy's probably not going to be a part of our future in 2022, but he's not going to be a part of our future probably in 2022. And this guy is creating noise and sort of distractions, although Brian Flores created the Jay-Z distraction all on his own. And that was, I think, one of his, first, mistakes as a head coach. But I think there was sort of that combination of things. So yes, I guess to answer your question, I do think there was an impact there. But the Dolphins, the way they made that trade, they can have plausible deniability that it was a football move. So it was smart on their perspective because it lightens the PR hit. But yes, I do think that it was a factor. I'm going to answer one more, and then one or two more, and then I'm going to go to sort of my thoughts on the Dolphins tank situation, and then I'm going to go a little bit more into NFL topics as a whole, and then we're going to get ready to watch some football. So keep firing away those questions. I see your question, Brandon. I see your question, Haddon. I see your question, Vernon. I see your question, Steve. You guys keep firing away. I'll answer a couple, and then we're going to talk some Tankgate. Um, Brandon, what's up, my guy? Thanks for checking on me on the hurricane. For everybody who doesn't know, Hurricane Dorian scared a bunch of us out here in Florida for a week or two. We thought it was going to hit us. We stocked up my house where we're in right now, and me and my wife stocked up and got a bunch of goods. And we never knew what was going to happen with a hurricane, so we were prepping for everything. We were trying to figure out if we needed to get, extra water, some fans, a generator, all types of stuff. And then the hurricane, thankful, thankful that the hurricane ultimately didn't end up hitting us. So it devastated Bahamas, and prayers up for them. But B ended up checking up on me, so I'm thankful for that, B. But he's asking the thoughts on the Broncos this year. For those of you who didn't know, I covered the Broncos for 2.5 years and lived in Denver during their Super Bowl reign and some time after. So I always keep a close eye on teams that I used to cover and places that I used to live. So my thoughts on the Denver Broncos is I'm excited to see what happens with them this year. I think Vic Fangio was, in my opinion, one of the top 3 defensive coordinators in the league, and I think that him as a head coach will be something extremely interesting because he's an old school guy, sort of contrary to what this new age is with Sean McVay and some of these high-powered offenses. He's a defensive minded. He's a gritty guy. But I think that's what could be good for this team. Von Miller's still out there. Chris Harris is still out there. I still think they have one of the best defenses in the league. And I think that's probably the style they need to play, especially with Joe Flacco at quarterback. You lean on Phillip Lindsay, you lean on Royce Freeman, and you lean on that defense, and you make a lot of ugly games. And I think that they can, compete, touch 500, maybe touch a little above 500, and maybe get into that wild card conversation. There's a really, really tough division out there in the AFC West. My guy Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be Super Bowl contenders. And, the Los Angeles Chargers are another team I really like a lot with Phillip Rivers. So I think the Broncos are the 3rd best team in that division. But, I think they can go either way. I think they can be a 6-10 team, a year away, or I think they could squeak in, as a 9-7 team who's in the wild card mix. So that's my thought on the Broncos. Haddon, do you expect Preston Williams to get a lot of playing time on Sunday? Yeah, he's the number 4 receiver now. The Kenny Stills trade that we mentioned earlier opens up the floodgates for some of these other guys. Jakeem Grant and Preston Williams, part-time players who are going to have significant roles going forward because of this. So Preston Williams isn't a week 1 starter, but I wouldn't be surprised if, in 3 or 4 weeks we're talking about Preston Williams as a starter. He looked great in camp. From the spring, from training camp, he looked like arguably their best receiver on the field at times. He disappeared a bit during the later preseason games, so I wonder how he's going to compete against NFL cornerback talent, starting cornerback talent. But I expect him to get significant playing time. I think him and Jakeem Grant will end up splitting, those reps on the outside, and he's going to earn it based on his playing time. So put on your unicorn hats. He says he's a unicorn. Put on your unicorn hats and ride that Preston Williams wave, because that's one of the Dolphins' best offseason finds, and I think you'll see a lot of him this season. All right. So I'm going to put a hold on the questions for just a second, and we're going to talk a little bit about Tankgate. There's been a lot of talk about the Dolphins tanking, and I have a few thoughts. One, this conversation has been going on since March, and I actually was of the opinion that they weren't tanking when they first started the offseason. They got rid of Tannehill. They got rid of, they didn't re-sign Wake or Gore or Amendola. or Jawan James. And they didn't sign any big free agents, but they did sign, Ryan Fitzpatrick. They signed Eric Rowe. They kind of filled a couple holes, not a lot, but filled a couple holes. And they signed Xavier Howard. So it seemed like a team that was truly rebuilding. What made me start to feel like, okay, maybe this team is actually going to try to be the worst team in the league from a front office perspective, so that they can get that top pick, is them trading Laramie Tunsil. For me, that's the one move that doesn't jive with the rest of their rebuilding offseason. Laramie Tunsil was a 25-year-old left tackle, a really good teammate. Guys loved him. I've had guys tell me over the last few days that they were, frustrated, angry, confused about Laramie Tunsil being traded. And I know that he was upset and angry, Laramie Tunsil was, about the trade. So that move just didn't seem to jive with their plan of getting rid of veterans. And I know the perspective that Brian Flores has said, and I do think there's some truth in that they feel like they got the best value, and it was too good to pass up. That's sort of what has been their reasoning. But you got to ask yourself, if Houston gave up 2 first-round picks for Laramie Tunsil that are likely to be in the 20s, you're hoping that at some point in the next 2 years you can find another Laramie Tunsil in the 20s of an NFL draft. And I'm not sure that you can. I think that Laramie Tunsil they lucked up to get him in the first place, and you're betting on a draft track record that's been shaky at best. So yes, it's a good move for the future, but it sort of kicks the can down the road to me. And I thought Laramie Tunsil was a guy that you build a core piece around. So that was my sort of hesitation with that trade. And I think you uproot your offensive line and you uproot your entire offense 1 week before the season. It sort of sends a strong message to the team that, hey, we're not going to be competing in 2019, and we're going to make sure that we're in position to get what we need in 2020 and 2021. And to be frank, a lot of these guys don't care about the future. A lot of these guys know they're not going to be here when the Dolphins are good again. So it seems like it's something that's benefiting people who are not them. So I think that's the dangerous element of this thing, is that you've got guys who may not buy in because the now is important. This is a game that doesn't promise anybody anything. So I guess that's sort of my thought on that. I think whether they're tanking or not, it's just a logistical name thing. I think it's pretty clear that they don't care about 2019 as much as they do 2021. And everything lines up and everything is guided towards getting a quarterback in that 2020 draft. I think that the Dolphins have, and this is my educated opinion, have made up their mind that they're going to draft a quarterback high in the 2020 draft. I think they spent the offseason evaluating Josh Rosen. They spent a second-round pick on him, and they felt like he didn't do enough to beat out Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I feel like they don't think that there's anything that he can do this year to change that. So because of that, I think they're going to say, hey, we're going to ride this wave out in 2019, but we're drafting a quarterback high next year. So Tua, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love from Utah State. There's a few other guys that probably going to get in the conversation. Jake Fromm, maybe out of Georgia. I expect the Dolphins to be extremely active in the scouting realm, and everything is about building up picks for 2020 and 2021 to get the quarterback they want and to build those young pieces. So that's their plan, and I think it's pretty clear. So I don't know if I would have done it exactly this way, especially the Laramie Tunsil part of the trade. But the one thing I can say about this situation is it's a welcome change from what they had been doing years and years before. They had been sort of mired in mediocrity, stuck in sort of that 7-9, 8-8, 9-7 plan for so long. So having a plan for the future, whether you agree or not, is something that should be commended. So I'm going to give Chris Greer and Brian Flores the benefit of the doubt and hope that they get this figured out. I'm eager to see how they handle the 2019 roster and the locker room and how the players respond. But I think they're asking for trust, they're asking for patience. I don't know if I'm going to give them trust, but I'll certainly give them patience because that's all we've got. So that's sort of my thought on the Tankgate situation. But I'm eager to hear what you guys think, and from a fan perspective, for those of you who are Dolphins fans, how you sort of handle this 2019 year. And I'm going to answer a few more questions, and I'll kind of give you guys a sort of a three-step guide of how I think maybe you handle a 2019 year as a Dolphins fan. And I'm going to talk a few more overriding NFL topics, and then I'm going to shut up so we can all watch some football. Um, so thank you guys as always for coming on these chats. We're gonna post these. I launched a new website with the help of my wife. We're gonna post these on my website. That's gonna air, shortly after, maybe the next day or so. It's gonna be on the website. We'll post on my YouTube channel, and we'll keep these things going weekly. And we'll try to add new elements, pop up in new locations, and kind of take this thing however you guys want to take it. So, Haddon, we answered your question on Preston Williams. Vernon, how are moves this year different than getting cut or traded for Panuta by Gase after losses in the regular season? I think that I'll answer this one very quickly, Vernon. I think Adam Gase's moves were personality driven. I think Brian Flores and Chris Greer's moves are age and long term talent vision oriented. So I think that Adam Gase got rid of Jay Ajayi because he felt like he wasn't a fit with their culture. He got rid of Jarvis Landry because of money, primarily, but secondary because he felt like he was an alpha personality that didn't match. Ndamukong Suh was something similar. They felt like the culture didn't fit, and he wasn't worth the money given that some of the issues they had with him. They got rid of Jordan Phillips because of the same thing. They felt like he wasn't a fit with Adam Gase and his culture. So all those, I think, were culture moves, whereas I think that the moves this year are clearly moves to say, hey, we're getting rid of players who are talented because we don't think they can help us 3 years down the line. So we're sacrificing short-term gain and short-term success and short-term competence so that we can potentially have long-term success and long-term high picks. So that's sort of, I think, the core difference in those moves. Vernon said he missed peanuts. Okay, all right. I was like, man, there's a new word there. Steve Oliver, hopefully I pronounced that right. He says, does Chris Grier have full control? Yes, Chris Grier has 53-man roster control. He has full power, so he has the final say. But knowing a little bit about Chris Grier and knowing a little bit about Brian Flores and how they work, I would gather that they have a lot more joint decisions than Chris Grier executive decisions. I find it hard to believe that Brian Flores is in the dark or they make decisions in spite of Brian Flores. So I think you'll see Brian Flores, Chris Grier, and their vice president of football administrations, Brandon Shore, in meeting rooms a lot, coming to joint decisions on a lot of these moves. So I think there are probably some moves that Chris Grier wanted to get done that he made. I think there are probably some moves that Brian Flores wanted that got made that Chris Grier didn't want, and I think vice versa. So yes, Chris Grier has 53-man roster control, but he's not the type of guy that kind of swings that power around like a big stick. He's not that type of dude. So I think that him and Brian Flores work well because there's nobody who's like overriding and demanding a personality. So I hope that sort of answers your question there. Ed mentions, talking about Preston Williams, saying he looked better with Rosen than Fitz. Yeah, they have a great connection. I found out they played together at the opening in Oregon in 2014. They were high school teammates in that college football 707 camp. So maybe that's why a little bit of the chemistry is there. And Rosen, he's a gunslinger kind of like Fitzpatrick, so he likes to throw the ball up. So Fitzpatrick sort of got a connection with Devontae Parker early in camp, and Rosen found his guy in Preston Williams. So, we may have to wait a few weeks to see Rosen, but we may see some Fitz to Preston Williams, very soon. Let's see. We're going to answer these two questions from Haddon and Lewis, and then I'm going to give you very quickly my guide of how to be a Dolphins fan this offseason, and then I'm going to give you a few overriding thoughts of what I think about the NFL season going forward. Haddon says, do you feel like they're hurting Minkah Fitzpatrick by not putting him in his natural position at safety? Great topic. We discussed this all the time in the media press room. What is Minka Fitzpatrick's best position, and are they using him correctly? Um, Here's what I'll say. Minka Fitzpatrick said that he doesn't want to play strong safety, or he said he does not feel like he's a great fit for strong safety because of his size. Um, I tend to agree to an extent that that's not where he should play. I would use him like the Philadelphia Eagles use Malcolm Jenkins, which means that he starts at free safety and he comes down as a nickel corner when teams go into nickel and dime coverages, which is 60% of the time in this modern NFL. And I would bring in another safety, in this case Bobby McCain, to play safety the rest of the time. So that way you make Minka Fitzpatrick a full-time player, and essentially you get Bobby McCain on the field at safety. So you have your five best DBs in there. So I don't know why they haven't chosen that route. Minka Fitzpatrick currently is the number 3 safety, and he's playing a lot of strong safety. And he's playing a lot of nickel. So I'm gonna try to let them figure it out. But for me, I don't think they put him in the best position. And that's just my personal perspective. And I do think that it's hurting his growth. I don't think he's been as open as he may have wanted to be about that. But I do think that he could be playing better and be better long term if they put him in his ideal position, which is the one I mentioned. Lewis, you got 2 questions for me on Tannehill and on U of H. Oh man, you trying to come at me? I got my U of H helmet here. This is Heisman winner Andre Ward signed this for me. It's a little mini helmet. If you guys saw me on SportsCenter talking to Davion Clowney a week ago, this was in the background. So this is a look at it. But yeah, UH took the L this week against Oklahoma. Unfortunately, they'll be back. I just think it was a situation where Jalen Hurts balled out against that defense, and it's a new head coach for the Cougs under Dana Holgorsen. So I just think they were getting their footing together. But I think they're going to be a good team this year. I think OU is going to be in the mix for the college football playoff. And I love that they got Jalen Hurts, and he's playing well. But don't sleep on the Cougs just yet. They'll be back. But I'm pumped to see Jalen Hurts ball out. Real quick, Lewis, I'm going to answer your question on Luis Velasquez. And then I'm going to give you 3 tips to being a Dolphins fan. And then we'll sort of try to end this shit. So, Lewis, do I think Tannehill will take over for Mariota at the end of the year? I know that's been a lot of speculation in Tennessee about what they're doing there. I know you guys love Mariota. I've got to see him stay healthy, and I've got to see more from him. I wouldn't feel comfortable paying number 8 Mariota this offseason if he didn't stay healthy and didn't have the best year of his career this year. So I love John Robinson going to get Tannehill. I think he's the best backup quarterback in the league, and I think he'll really push Marcus. So I guess to answer your question, I say yeah, man. I think by the end of the year, Tannehill was playing for Mariota, whether via injury or via performance. I just haven't seen enough from Marcus for me to feel comfortable. And I know this about Tannehill. Miami folks had their issues about Tannehill because he couldn't get over the gap. But he comes to play every week. And I do think that he ultimately is going to be prepared and motivated to come in as a backup. So if Mariota hits one of those lulls or if he gets hurt, Tannehill will jump in ready to play. So, yeah, if I make a prediction, sort of a bold prediction, I think at some point this year Tannehill takes over for Mariota. So real quick, 3 guys to be a Dolphins fan this offseason. First of all, I'm sorry. It's going to be a rough year. Not going to be terribly fun. But I think one and the most important goal is you watch the quarterback situation and you watch a lot of Saturday night and Saturday day football, and you evaluate these quarterbacks and you root for whoever you want the Dolphins to take in the 2020 draft. You want to find the guy you want, and you hope the Dolphins are in great position to pick them. So you're like Chris Greer. You're looking at these guys. You're scouting. Do you like Tua? Do you like Justin? Do you like Jake? Do you like Jordan? All those guys, and you make your evaluation. And you watch on Sundays, and you see, okay, how would he fit here? How would he fit in Chad O'Shea's scheme? How would he do here? You're going to see Josh Rosen a little bit this year. I don't think they think he's the answer, but maybe you hope that he does well. Whatever your number one step as a Dolphins fan should be, figuring out that quarterback position by April 27th of next year and knowing that you got your guy. Number two, core players on this team. You want to see them put in the best position, like we mentioned with Minkah Fitzpatrick earlier, and you want to see them grow and succeed. 5 guys that I'm circling this year for the Dolphins that I would love to see take that next step and really show themselves to be core pieces moving forward. Jerome Baker, who I think is going to have the breakout year of all the players on the Dolphins. I think he's going to, really open up people's eyes. Minkah Fitzpatrick, who we talked about earlier, your first overall pick last year. Christian Wilkins, is my number 3. He's your first overall pick this year, and a guy who could be the anchor of your defensive line. Xavier Howard, who got that big bag this offseason, got paid, and he is well worth the bag. Does he become what he hopes to be, the top corner in the NFL? That's number 4. And then number 5, and I think this is important, you want to figure out, is there anybody on that offensive line that's worth keeping? So for me, it's Dieter / Shaq Calhoun / Jesse Davis. Do we have to start from scratch, or do we have anything we can build on? So those are the 5 things I think for player-wise that you look for as your core pieces going forward. And number 3, you don't want to see your team get embarrassed. I know this Tankgate is going on. I know that everybody is like, lose, go 0-16, get the picks. But I think there's a way to do it where you still have some dignity. And I think that as a Dolphins fan, you should hope every Sunday that even if my team doesn't lose, they come out and play for Brian Flores and they don't get smacked 49-0. I think you don't want to look like one of those teams that get paid to go to play one of those big schools outside of Georgia State and Tennessee on a given Saturday just to get that check. You don't want your Miami Dolphins to look that way. So I think that's the 3 steps to be a Dolphins fan. If you look at it that way and you don't worry about wins and losses, you won't stress as much as you may have in previous seasons. So that's my thoughts on that. Hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of a view. I'm going to get out of here in a couple minutes, set up for this game. But I will give you guys these thoughts to leave on. I'm excited for this NFL season. I think that it's going to be a bunch of fun. I think there are 4 teams that are really contenders to win this all. I think that, the New Orleans Saints, the Los Angeles Rams, 4 teams from each division, our conference, the Los Angeles Rams, New Orleans Saints, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Chicago Bears, who play tonight. I think those are the 4 teams that I look at and say those teams can win a title this year. In the AFC side, I think there are 3. I think that I look at, 3, maybe 4. I think I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, I look at the Los Angeles Chargers, and I look at the New England Patriots. And the 4th team, I'm not convinced on them yet, but the moves they made this offseason kind of pushed me towards the Houston Texans. So that's sort of my thoughts on the teams in the NFLs that can make some noise, and I'm ready to watch some football. So we'll be back here again next week. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed Howling with the Wolf, and leave your feedback. Let me know if you guys want anything different, want anything more of, and we'll be back to talk a little bit more football next week.